today. And I'm gonna introduce Professor Carmen Fonseca Mora by reading her biodata, and then we get started. And maybe, Aisha, you can take care of if there are other people who want to join, you can let them in. Okay. So Dr. Carmen Fonseca Mora is a full professor of applied linguistics in the Department of English Philology at the University of Huelva, Spain, where she has been also Vice Chancellor for Lifelong Learning Programs and Innovation and Director of the Research Center COIDESO. She's the head of REAL, Research in Affective Language Learning Lab. Her main research interests and international projects are related to affect, music, reading, multiliteracies, and innovation in second language learning. At present, she's leading the project Multiliteracies for Adult at-Risk Learners of Additional Languages, Multilits, supported by the Spanish Research Ministry. Her work, published in Spanish, English, and German, has appeared in more than 100 academic journals and edited volumes, published by Routledge, Peter Lang, Multilingual Matters, Heidelberg Verlag, Gruppo Comunica, Cambridge Scholars, Sage, Oxford Journals, among others. She's lectured in Germany, Portugal, France, Italy, Great Britain, Sweden, Peru, United States, Austria, and Spain. She's currently a member of the Conseil Européen pour les Langues, European Language Council, the European Society of Research on the Education of Adults, ESREA, and associate editor of the European Journal of Language Policy. So without further ado, join me in welcoming Professor Carmen Fonseca Mora to our research colloquium. And the floor is yours, Carmen.
Thank you so much, dear Enrica. It's such a pleasure to be here, and I feel very, very honored to be to participate in this research colloquium. So, good afternoon, good evening from here. It's a pleasure to be with all you. So, the topic of today is I first want to share my screen. Give me a second. Here it goes. Yeah. Okay. So that we can see. The topic of today is for me a very important one, an interesting one. I've spent a lot of time in my life trying to find the answer about why, when I was a language teacher in kindergarten, in primary, I also have taught primary students and teenagers and adults, why whenever we use music in the classroom, or whenever we use songs, why I thought that my students were enjoying and they were learning better with this type of strategies. So and in fact, but what I wanted to know is exactly why it was working, what was happening there. And that is the reason why I wanted to present, yes, talking about musical aptitude. But then I also think it is an interesting topic for this research colloquium, because researching, as you already know, is yes, the constant decision making. And making decisions is exactly what we have been doing the whole time since we started with this topic of musical aptitude. If I ask you how many of you have, play an instrument, yeah, you can raise your hands. How many of you sing? Okay. How many of you listen to music? And many of you, at least the last one, listening to music is a main. So the mainstream learner, teacher is interested in this music, because music, it's quite curious. The human being is the only one that can speak, but the human being, music, is also so relevant in our life. Why is it there? That is what I wanted to know. That was my question. So in order to explain a bit and to convince you how relevant musical aptitude is, first of all, I want just to think with you if it's true that music is a universal language. Yeah. because it is said it is, but let's see, we will see in a second. Then I will go towards the concept of musical aptitude. What do we understand by musical aptitude? And I will connect it, and you will see that musical aptitude, when we're talking about this topic, it is quite a multidisciplinary topic where neurosciences, language education, psycholinguistics, all everything goes together, where we'll have quantitative studies, but we will also have qualitative studies as I will show you in a second. So from speech melodies, we will go to something to reading readiness, which sounds I know it sounds strange, but you will pretty well understand it. And then I will go on, yes, showing about empirical studies we have done in my lab on musical aptitude and language reading. And we've done it with primary students, with adolescents, and in different languages with European adults, so that in the end we can come to certain conclusions and we can talk about this. And yes, to see what you think about all this, which is just still quite new information in many cases. So let's start with the first part. Is music a universal language? So, and I want to show it just a bit of music. It is a bit of music from here, from Huelva. Huelva, we are very fond of flamenco music, okay? And Huelva, for you to know, is just a small, relaxed, calm town on the beach from where Columbus sailed away to discover America. That is our thing. And here it is.
Porque poco te vendiste, mujer de tanto valer, porque poco te vendiste, que el hombre que te compró fue porque tú lo quisiste. No digas que
So is music a universal language? And we would say, no. Do you appreciate this type of music? Do you normally listen to this type of music? Do you understand this music? Probably you will feel perhaps some of you will have felt the aesthetic emotion, just appreciating that this woman is doing something that is art, that it is different from what other people can do, okay? But logically, we are not all used to this type of music, because music is culture bond. There are as many types of music as languages in the world. So that is something very important. So I could not start just with the idea. The first decision is no, music is not a universal language in this sense. It is culture bond, and what we consume is not for everybody, is not the same. So I couldn't start with the idea the best music for language learning is Mozart, the best music for language learning is reggae, the best music is flamenco, okay? So I went away from this idea just to go inside totally different one. So the concept of musical aptitude runs into a pole where some researchers say it is an acquired skill. It's something you learn. You learn to sing, which is not the same than to play an instrument, okay? But it can be an acquired skill, where other people say no. Freya, for example, says no, it's an innate talent. You are born with this capacity. Whatever it would be, okay, our musical concept, our concept of musical aptitude has to do more with this, with these authors, with these researchers. We think when we are talking about musical aptitude and the mainstream language learner, we're talking about the musically experienced listener. And there is research showing that the experienced listeners, musically untrained, they have not been trained, that these listeners, they use exactly the same principles as musical experts do when they are organizing their hearing of music. So musically experienced listeners, we observed, and also because we found the tools to measure this musical aptitude, were people that there were people that could score high, even if they didn't play an instrument, or they were not singers. So we were talking normally about musically experienced listener that is directly talking not about musical production, but about musical perception. Okay, that will be our first concept, so that it could be for all the mainstream learners and not only for special ones. And it is quite curious because Patricia Kuhl, who researches first language acquisition, she analyzed what babies do when they are acquiring the language. And what babies do when they acquire the language is, she says, they are geniuses, because babies, they are wired towards, they are getting on statistics. They are looking, yes, for all the different patterns they hear. That's the reason that at the age of 6 months, they can really get the patterns of many different languages. They are looking for the consonant vowel patterns. Okay, and she went on, and she continued working with on that, and she found that babies, when they were exposed early to music, so early music experience goes beyond sensory processing to prepare brain circuitry for complex pattern recognition and success at a variety of cognitive tasks. So from the very first moments, the musical experience plays their role in language acquisition. And when we are talking about cognitive tasks, obviously language is one of the greatest one. So I started, and the first thing I did, I was trying to see the network. Were there other people working on the same than me? Were there other people with the same interests? And I found Kathleen Böhmke from University of Würzburg in Germany, in the south of Germany. And she was just analyzing the cries of the babies. And this is what she found out.
This is a cry of a baby born to German-speaking parents. And this one is a baby born to French-speaking parents. Can you tell the difference? It's in the intonation. The French baby goes up and the German baby goes down, just like the general intonation of both languages.
And that is exactly what she was saying. She was saying that starting from these melodious cries, then afterwards came the articulate sounds. And what was curious enough is that she found that these melodies, they were culture bond. They depended on their mother tongue, on the tongue of their mothers. So melodies, they established that melodies were at the root of language acquisition, but they were not the only one.
This is a cry.
They were not the only ones, because there were also other people understanding that music perception, so the experienced listeners, okay, that it was an individual difference that was affecting phonological skills when they were talking about adults and when they were talking about older learners, not babies, okay? So the case is that from neurosciences, we found that music and language had similar mechanisms for auditory processing. And Mirol Besson and Anirudh Patel, they found that the same neural mechanisms were for pitch, which indicates the intonation, For duration, which what means you can lengthen a syllable, but you can also make longer a note. For intensity, for tempo, the speed with which you speak or the speed of the music. Timbre, which is just to differentiate between consonant and vowels, but also to differentiate the different qualities of any type of instrument or rhythm that has to do with the grouping of different patterns. So all of these people were saying that there is between music and language, there are common neural mechanisms. And when we came to the babies and to the speech melodies again, there were also found out when parents were observed how they were talking, they observed that there's something called parentese. When we parents talk to our babies, we do things and we say, "You do? Okay, let's play with the big red truck." So you're really singing, and you do that in every type of language. High-pitched sounds, elongated vowels, sing-song voice, short and slow, repetition and simplicity. And this is quite curious. Why do we do that? And why do we do that? Because there are universal speech melodies. They have been found the same in Mandarin Chinese, in French and German, the same type of intonation. So what Patricia Kuhl found out from neuroscience and education is that high quantity and quality of language addressed to young children and parents' use of the speaking style called parentese, which is the sing-song voice, are associated with advanced early language skills and reading readiness in children at the age of 5 years. So why was that? We have right now have said that musical perception affects our phonological skills, yeah? The skills we hear. But what has this to do with reading readiness? And it is that when we talk about phonological items, we often think about what we hear. But when we are reading, what we are doing is we are giving to graphemes, we are giving sounds. So it's sounding a text as well. So again, what we are doing when we are reading is we are recovering the phonological information in the so the recovery of phonological information is the main target of reading. And for instance, I give you an example. We can clap that, and you can clap it with me. When we say, "My mother loves me," "My mother loves me." It's totally different when we say in Spanish exactly the same, "mi, ma, me, ma." So as you can observe, the melody and the rhythm is totally different. Why is that? It's just because one of them is a stressed syllable stressed language, and the other one is a weak and strong language, as for example in the English one, where we've got weak and we've got strong syllables, but in Spanish they are all of the same length. Okay, so this changes the melody, the musicality of language. This has an effect, and this has an effect because we are recovering phonological information. But let's go one step further to understand that, because we're not really understanding this. So we went just to observe and to analyze the process, the learning to read, how it happens. And what we did is we observed. No, we did not observe. We saw what others were saying, and then this is just an analysis of what many researchers have said. Okay, so there are different phases when we are learning to read. First of all, is the phonological awareness phase. So this recovering that comes from phonological awareness is totally oral. actually, where it is the process towards literacy that starts at oracy. Okay, so phonological awareness, as I will show you in a moment, has to do just when we hear a stream of sounds, we have to, first of all, we have to distinguish, are they related to language or are they noise? And even more, when we hear a stream of sounds, for example, on a radio or from a foreign language, the first thing we do is we try to cut that stream of sounds into something recognizable, probably words, vocabulary, okay? And then we have to go to mix up those sounds and graphemes, which is the alphabetic principle. Once we have all that, we go towards reading fluency, and then we reach reading comprehension. So if this is the process we follow, what has been found out that is that, for instance, when we are in this phonological awareness, which is to develop phonological awareness, everyone has, there is consensus in research that phonological awareness is a predictor of reading competence. So phonological awareness has to do with phonemic awareness. Do we know the sounds, initial sounds, finding final sounds, intrasyllabic awareness, whole word recognition? So when we hear something, okay, children are in kindergarten, they are learning, and that we asked with the different songs, they if there is rhyme, alliteration, how to segment a sentence, just by clapping the words or by stamping their feet, they do. So they are learning how to manipulate all these different sounds. And this is very often done with songs. I will show you. I show you what happens here. Okay. And actually, I want you to do what exactly, if you don't mind, to participate and to do exactly what the singer is asking us to do. Okay. So it's about ending sound. It is entitled Ending Sound Song.
All words have letters, all letters make sounds. Let's learn about the ending sounds right now. The ending sound is at the end of the word. If you listen carefully, it can be heard. Listen, look, and sing along with me, my friend. Raise your arms when you hear the T sound t at the end. Cat, bat, wet, sit, put, hot. The sound at the end is the T sound t. Listen, look, and sing along with me, my friend. Sway your hips when you hear the G sound g at the end. Rug, dog, frog.
Okay, as you can see, what we are doing is, yes, we are listening to the words, we are identifying the words, we are seeing the words. So we are using different modes, okay? And at the same time, he's asking us with our body, okay? It's embodied language learning, to answer. And at the same time, we are paying attention to the final sound. So we are being aware of the final sound, okay? And then he gives the name of the sound, okay? And he gives the sound. So he says T, T, T. And this here is playing with the final sounds, okay? So this helps children, this type of songs help children to recognize words. And then in the end, they will have those words and the pictures and, and so forth and so on. So they go from the song, yes, to the part of their, to learning the whole word, and then to learning them in context, and then learning to read. So these were the types of songs and video clips we used in a classroom to observe, and we did it with 63 very young 7 to 8 young foreign language learners. They were in the second grade of primary school, and they belonged to 2 different schools. So our hypothesis was that young foreign language learners' musical perception would affect their early reading abilities. And earlier reading abilities are phonemic awareness, alphabetic principles, and word decoding skills. So we used our research question where just, okay, music perception, this experience, because mainstream learners, we were not asking if they could sing or if they had been trained, okay? They were only 7 to 8 years old. So does music perception have an influence on foreign language learning early reading? Do L1 reading scores predict foreign language early reading scores? Is there the L1 factor involved? Or is it music that affects the L1 factor? These were Spanish learners learning English, okay? So what we did is we analyzed their musical perception. And with their musical perception, we said that is pitch, intensity, duration, rhythm, timbre, tempo. So we use the test just to measure their abilities in this sense, okay? And then we use the test in Spanish, and we use the test in English. The test is called EGRA, E-G-R-A. It exists because it has been used in more than 70 different languages. And it's the early reading grade test. So, and we measured, so here, as you can see, the letter sound knowledge, if they knew that it was the sound, the correspondence, if they could identify initial sounds, if they could identify words with the same initial sound, if they could identify words, familiar words, as for example, pig or cat, the ones we have just seen, or even if they were capable of reading pseudo words, words that do not exist. And we did that in Spanish, which is the L1, and we did it in the foreign language. And we wanted to know if there was any type of relationship, thinking that musical perception would directly affect foreign language learning. And the answers were the following one. We had also to find out how to analyze this. And look here, I was lucky because among my colleagues, we've got something who's an expert in statistics. And he actually, what he created was, because we wanted to know the effect. And when you want to know the effect, correlations is not enough. So we used the structural equation, okay, which is quite complex. And what we found out is that musical perception directly and significantly had an effect on students' L1 reading abilities. So musical perception into Spanish. And then it has an effect into the foreign language. So although there was not really a direct influence on foreign language, but first language was mediating between both. So early reading skills in a foreign language depend on L1 reading skills. When you find students who are having problems in the foreign language reading skills, perhaps you need to analyze what's happening in their mother tongue, because it can be a reflection or direct affection. So significant effect of musical perception on L1 early reading skills. The same that this readiness that in certain way with early musical exposure, Patricia Kuhl was talking about with babies. We found it something very similar with young learners. And L1 is the way music perception influences foreign language early reading skills. So the L1 factor was really relevant. And Some 2 years later, there came another article that was really related to the same topic. So with children, but this time they directly, we did not distinguish between melody or rhythm or intensity, but Tina et al. They did, and they found out that actually the rhythm, they found out that students who had good rhythmic skills, they learned better to read. And it is normal because music is what music is really giving is this group is patterns, okay? And we said that from the very beginning, what our brain does, it looks for patterns. It looks for patterns in first language acquisition. It also looks for patterns in second language acquisition. And rhythm is yes, that is the grouping of different patterns, okay? So we went one step further. We had we saw the national reading panel and the reading pyramid, where cognitive skills as phonological awareness, processing, attention, automaticity, memory, sequencing were at the base. Then came reading fluency mixed up with the language by itself, with the vocabulary. Then came reading comprehension, and then from learning to read, we went to reading to learn, which was the next step. And that's the reason why reading is so relevant, because it affects any type of topic. Okay. So, but we wanted to know, okay, what happens with adolescents and in adult literacy? Was it the same? Did they have the same effect? But when we're talking about adolescents and adults, we thought, okay, but can we measure only their phonological awareness, or do we have to measure something else? Because we cannot measure really their early reading skills. And we went on and thought about fluency and found that reading fluency is the hallmark of skilled readers. And what is reading fluency? And we found that it is the ability to read text quickly and accurately, effortlessly, and with good understandings. Others have extended the definition to include appropriate prosody. And in fact, you need to read with this appropriate prosody, because if not, you do not stop exactly where you have to stop to get the whole phrase and to go to understanding. So another line of definitions refers to achieving automaticity in the underlying skills of reading and the proper integration. But for us, really just thinking about reading and thinking about how to rhythmic grouping the phrases made a lot of sense. So reading fluency studying reading fluency could be something interesting. But then we found out that the skilled learner, the adult learner, does not read aloud. It's not about oral reading literacy, fluency, but silent reading fluency, which made it even more difficult because silent reading fluency is a non-observable behavior. So how can you measure that? And that was for us our great problem. But we found and for primary students, we found a test that was entitled contextual word reading. Okay. And I can show you afterwards the type of test. So we took that idea and we prepared we took articles from the human rights in different languages, in Spanish, in English, in Italian, and French, and we studied the difficulty of the text so that they were all similar, and then we adapted, and we created that silent reading fluency test. I show you afterwards so you see how it is. So we wanted to know, first of all, with adolescents. We went first with adolescents, and we wanted to know if, because we found a school where students, as optional subjects, they went to a music school, they went to a conservatory, and there they learned to play instruments. Okay, So we wanted to know if the effects of musical training on our learners' fluency, okay, on our English foreign learners' reading skills. But we also wanted to add one question. We added a question. We wanted to know about their willingness to continue learning a foreign language, and you will see in a second why. So as instruments, there were Spanish students, and we used two instruments, silent reading fluency test and the reading self-efficacy test. The reading self-efficacy test is a test where students are asked about their beliefs, how good or how bad, how capable they are of reading in a foreign language. Good. 180 students, all Spanish native speakers, no reading disability. 52% were just taking on this musical training, and 47% without music training. And we used these both tests, and we added this question: are you willing to continue studying foreign language? And what did we find out? So as regards the statistics, and here we are only talking about the means. So we found that in silent reading fluency, the musical students, they did better. 20 points better, more or less, than the non-musical group. As regards their concept of self-efficacy, if they were good readers or not, again, the musical group thought they were better than the non-musical group. And we also found that both were statistical differences, significant differences. When we went to ask them if they were willing to continue studying the foreign language, look, in gray, you can see the answer of the musical group. The musical group said 66% completely sure. We want to continue. While the non-musical one, only 38%. If you think about the answers of the students, what they are doing is they are giving quite logical answers. Musically trained participants performed better in the silent reading fluency. And it is probably because when they are recovering phonological awareness, it has to do with their auditory sensitivity, with their auditory capacities. And probably because when you are learning to play an instrument, what you do is you look for precision, you look for repetition, you look for the exact correct sounds. Okay, so you pay more attention to how everything sounds. So that sounding because made musical trained students believe that they were better readers. I don't know if you ever have read in a foreign language, read aloud for yourself in a foreign language, and that you were learning, and you said, "Wow, I sound good. It sounds good. That's me speaking that language or reading that aloud." So the pleasure of hearing that you can do it well, okay, obviously this language learning becomes a pleasant experience. And students answered they showed a stronger willingness to continue studying the foreign language, and probably it was because they acknowledged that it was a pleasant thing, something that they were doing and they were good at doing it. Nevertheless, this research had some problem, as you may guess, and the problem, it's still unpublished. It's still unpublished. Okay. So the problem was probably that that could have been due to other reasons. They could have been due to reasons such as, for example, we don't know if it was just because musical students were more intelligent, or because musical trained students had better working memory. We hadn't, or because their phonological awareness, which is a predictor we said before, was just better. So there were other variables we had not measured, and that is a problem. So when you design something, you need to take care because just to check that there are not other variables that could show something different. So we were not so really sure, although the answers were quite logical. Okay, they sounded quite logical. We don't know because there could have been other. So it was not a good research design from the very beginning. Good. But we went on reading and trying to find answers, and we found out that reading variability was really related to the auditory brainstem response. So, and that is what we were saying. Reading is not only because reading for many psycholinguists has to do with what they do. They use eye tracking systems to measure reading because they forget that it is also an acoustic issue. They just look at it from a visual perspective. Okay, while we are saying that reading is an acoustic, has an acoustic dimension. But and we also find other researchers saying that reading subskills and musical experience are related in adulthood. So it was not only children, babies, also adults that we were trying to find out. And they also said something we already knew. Brain's neural encoding and perception of sound not necessarily enhanced by musical training, so that it could be also only due to musical experience, as we were saying. So we wanted to know, adult silent reading fluency, is it related to musical aptitude? Has it something to do with language proficiency? Has it to do with other cognitive factors? So we had to measure all that. And this time we went, and our research, we did it with students from Austria, so German speakers, who were learning Spanish as a foreign language, but they all knew other languages as well. And we found that 53% were with musical training and 47% without musical training. So. And we wanted just to see if there were other cognitive and linguistic variables that could affect the foreign ratings, the foreign language silent reading fluency skill. So this time we measured their silent reading fluency in both tests, in first and foreign language. They took a musical aptitude test, really to show that they were high on this musical perception. Then we measured their working memory, and we measured their intelligence. And in the social demographic questionnaire at the very beginning, we also asked them for the proficiency level, and we asked them for the number of languages they knew. And the results showed the following. They showed that musical aptitude, as well as other cognitive factors, such as working memory and general intelligence, were related to adult silent reading abilities, but also the knowledge of other foreign languages. That is, their plurilingualism, their plurilingual capacities, okay? Because we did not measure to what extent the language proficiency of the other languages, yes, the number of languages they said they spoke, okay? So the knowledge of other languages, of foreign languages, plurilingualism was another interesting one. But musical aptitude was still there. So we went from the to Romance language to study Romance language transfer. Okay, here in this case, we went to the University of Macerata. We worked there with students from who were learning Spanish, Italian native speakers learning Spanish, who had never been in an immersion program in Spain, and no reading disability was observed. And this time we wanted to measure everything, okay? So it is a quantitative study where we measured their reading comprehension, their working memory and processing speed, their foreign silent reading fluency in the foreign language and the first language, their phonological awareness, and also their music perception. And with all this, we found out that we had to know the cause effect, we had to do a structural equation. And what was our finding? What is the relationship between first language and foreign language silent reading fluency? And we found there was a relationship, and in the correlations, it was significant. And then we asked, does musical aptitude relate to foreign language fluency and to silent reading fluency in the second language and the first language? And yes, in both cases, fluency and musical aptitude, they showed high correlations. And then we said, does phonological awareness relate to foreign language silent reading fluency? And yes, it is a predictor, and it was significantly there. But then, as I told you, we did this structural equation just to study if there was an effect. And we entitled the article, The Acoustic Dimension of Reading. Does musical aptitude affect silent reading fluency? And the answer is yes, it does directly. But the silent reading fluency in general, in this silent reading fluency, we entered both the first and the foreign language, okay, concept. So silent reading fluency in general, as an abstract, as a construct, okay, made up by all the languages where they could have read in. And we found that the musical aptitude had a very strong impact. It is an individual difference, okay? The same than the phonological awareness, the auditory working memory. So we found that all of them had an impact on silent reading fluency. So that's the reason why we could talk about the acoustic dimension of reading and not only the visual dimension of reading that many from the psycholinguistic perspective, many of our colleagues were just debating with us, discussing with us. And now a change, a sort of a change, because we also wanted to go inside language education. And while we were doing all that research, it came the case that the Common European Framework for Languages, the companion volume, was launched in 2018. And we were there, and we had the pleasure of meeting Dr. Enrica Picardo there, who presented just a paradigm which is just the mediation paradigm. And she said that it could be a shift in the foreign language classroom, both at the societal and the individual levels. And we understood that it could be a language learning approach, different, okay, that could train our students in a different way. Because we also understood this urgent need of educational focus on plurilingual, pluricultural development. Yes, in this, while students were working in groups, while they were collaborating, where they had a problem where they had to solve the task they had to do. They were doing collaborative dialogue. That means that they were accepting the others, listening to the others, and standing in their shoes, yes, to help them to do all these mediation skills that were proposed here. So our proposal was to create a scenario with music. Okay, let's see. Can we work with this scenario of mediation if we add music? What would happen then? And we thought that probably what it would happen is that student would enhance their social emotional skills. So this time, totally different. Look, nothing to do with it has to do with reading, because the video clips, they are listening and reading the subtitles as well. So nothing is totally out one from the other. But mediation, what our hypothesis was that mediation in foreign language learning, reinforced through musical activities, could provide an environment where learners maximize their social emotional abilities and their communicative skills. And we gave them a scenario, a pedagogic intervention, much complex than the one I show you here. But just to summarize, not to make it too long, what they had to do is in groups of 5, in groups, they had to find 5 musical video clips in 3 different languages that include the same emotion. So, and then they had to write a post recommending those video clips for language learners. So in 3 different languages would mean that they had to use their plurilingual competences in more than one language. And we did it with adult learners of English in a language school where there were adults, but there were also students, Erasmus students from other countries, from Latvia, from Portugal, from France, from Mexico. So what we could do is that in each group, there was at least one Erasmus student. So immediately, if they had to look for 3 video clips, it was a Spanish video clip, an English video clip, and the language of the Erasmus student, okay? So, and we used a pre-post design. And as and we used 2 scale. We used social emotional scale to measure, and the social emotional scale measured their adaptability, the capacity of adapting to others in different interactions. And it also measured their expressivity, their capacity to express their emotions, to convey affect. And then we also measured the different descriptors, some descriptors of mediation that were given by the companion volume. Okay, so we did the pedagogical intervention, which is just here in Medium, where students, they were looking for the video clips. They were then, while they were analyzing the text, they found out things as, for example, that metaphors, that when you express your emotions, you use metaphors, because many times what you want to say, the words are not enough, the literal words, so you need to use. And they found that these metaphors could be quite different in different languages. As for example, when you love someone very much, you can say, you are my soulmate, but in Spanish you say, tú eres mi media naranja, you are my half orange. And in Turkish you say, you are my half apple. Totally different, okay? So so they found that in different cultures that they were saying different things, but they were of the same importance. No matter the language, they were meaning the same, although they were said in different ways. And they also were discussing, because they found, as adults, when they were analyzing those different video clips, they found stereotype things, gender issues. It went much more about that. So we had this quantitative analysis, okay, from the scales with the data from the pre and post scales. And we also used a focus group, yes, to know a bit more. That would be, that means a qualitative analysis of what our students thought about this musically induced activity, okay? So the mediation descriptors, as you all know, they are there. Yes, students are rephrasing, students are negotiating, and they looked at, they were something such as, for example, I can collaborate in simple shared tasks and work towards a common goal in a group by asking and answering straightforward questions. I can help to define goals for teamwork and compare options for how to achieve them. I can present the student can present her ideas in a group and pose questions that invite reactions from other group members' perspectives, or the student can explain the different roles of participants in the collaborative process, giving clear instructions for group work. So when we measured these types of descriptors and we measured the social scale, the results were the following. So the overall mediation, okay, were correlate significantly with the social emotional scores, okay? And when we went into the social emotional scores, what we found out is they were correlated significantly with the expressivity. That is, students were learning to express their emotions, to convey their affect to others. That is what we were finding here. This is just a preliminary study, and I know we need to go further on, deeper on. But when we went to ask them about what they thought about this type of activity, the first thing they said is they were dazed. They felt baffled, because they've never been in such a situation, in a learning situation. I think at the beginning, they were giving that and they didn't know exactly how to do it. They had to cope with uncertainty instead of the teacher teaching and now open the book and now you will hear that listening and from that listening you will go to that reading activity and you do exactly that writing. No, it was a bit different. They had to organize themselves. So this flexibility at the beginning, they felt baffled, but then they said, but in the end, we feel proud because we could do it. And the teacher obviously was constantly scaffolding, helping in their intervention. They were not left alone. They also valued the teamwork as a valuable and enjoyable experience. They enjoyed very much the cultural points, perspective from the others. Yes, talking about all the different pluricultural items that came out in the different languages they were talking. But they also said something negative, and they said we need to be trained even in language classes to avoid the conflicts that arise in this teamwork, because there are always conflicts. In group work there is the one who is always the leader and he's working a lot, and there is someone who is not working so much and relies more on what others do. As far as music, they found that music is they rated it as a plurilingual and pluricultural mediator. And also they said that they felt through the different musicals they were listening and sharing and laughing at and and then observing the images of the video clips, but also the wordings, the different discourse. They said that they felt that music activated their agency and also their positive emotions, and that made them more creative. That is what they said. So yes, to finish, in conclusion, what have we said about musical aptitude and language learning? First of all, we have said that language and music, they share neural mechanisms. So there is something, okay, where they go together, although they are different in many other things. For example, music does not have the semantic component that a language has, okay? But nevertheless, we have also said that music can be culture bond. Not everyone enjoys every type of music, okay? So, but when we were talking about, we found the necessity of identifying musical aptitude and to defining it as musical perception. So that it could include the experienced listener, musically experienced listener in the mainstream classroom. So, but we observed, for example, that when we're talking about musically trained learners, they showed more willingness, probably because they felt more pleasure in the sounding system. Okay, we found that musical perception affects phonological skills, and that these phonological skills affect reading. So that musical perception can be an individual factor that needs to be considered when learning to read. So we saw that musical perception affects early reading skills, but we also found that it is more on the first language reading skills where the impact was, and then then it was not such a strong on the foreign language one. We also found that musical aptitude is an individual difference that affects adult silent reading fluency. And finally, we found that the music-mediated language experience can act as a plurilingual, pluricultural mediator and can induce positive emotions connected to creativity and agency. And for all these reasons, I think that now we understand a bit better the function of using music and musical songs in the language class. The reason why to use them, because we think we are helping our students to develop at least we also know that it is the pronunciation, but at least the reading skills. So thank you very much for your attention.
Thanks a lot. Thank you for